only be filled with joy in so much as you've been hollowed out by sorrow. Like you can only be as ecstatic as much as you can rage. Like you have this range, and it's like you know what I'm saying? Is that?
Yeah, I do.
And that if you temper one end of that spectrum, you're also necessarily tempering the other end of that spectrum.
Possibly. I mean, there are those who don't ever experience great sorrow in their lives, but they do experience a good amount of happiness. But say someone does experience a great amount of sorrow in their lives, and then they reach the same amount of happiness that the other person achieved. That happiness would mean a lot more to them than it would to the first person.
But what I was trying to get at with the degree, though, not as in I am mildly happy or extremely happy. That's sort of a degree. Is as in some people have this idea that perhaps looking at high art, or is somehow a more I want to say higher, but that has the connotation with severity again.
A lot of what is a influence
on whole,
a more wholesome happiness than taking drugs, but yeah.
Well, a lot of what I'm saying is influenced by this essay in Chinese that I read. I don't remember the title. We read it right now, but it basically said that there are four types of happiness. First type of happiness, the lowest superficial type of happiness, is the happiness that is immediate. From that it comes from taking drugs or like sex or even eating a piece of candy. That's immediate happiness. You're happy you're doing it. Then there's a second degree of happiness, which is comes from after you have striven to achieve something. Say, I work really hard and I do well on a test, or I work long hours and then I buy a nice car. Like that kind of happiness comes after you do some kind of work. Third type of happiness comes from human relationships. So this is going a little deeper. The happiness you get from your spouse or a family relationship. Just knowing that someone loves you can bring a very high, deep sense of happiness. And finally, there's the fourth degree of happiness, which comes from yourself. And this has a lot to do with, I connected this to Buddhism. Enlightenment. You go into yourself, and then you have a realization, and that realization makes you happy. So, say I can find happiness within myself by, being happy to be alive. Just the very fact that I am myself makes me happy. So
that reminds me of the lecture we saw from Dr. Stefan Klein about the science of happiness, and I think, what his research has borne out is that it seems like those first two kinds of happiness that you mentioned, they give returns on a kind of logarithmic scale. So there sort of are, I don't know if there's degrees of happiness or not, but like the degree of happiness that you receive from, say, eating like that one piece of candy, or getting that first paycheck, or buying that first car or something, in order to achieve that same level of happiness, it needs to increase at like an exponential amount. Like to get the same amount of happiness from buying your first $100,000 car, you'll need to buy like $1 million car next time to get like the same jump in relative happiness, right? And so that's how come it's very easy through those two kinds of happiness to end up in a cycle where you're constantly chasing, almost like an addiction, right? That you can never finally satisfy. But then he said that third type that you talked about that comes from relationships, that people that are like in caring professions or something, right? They don't exhibit those same characteristics. Like they're able to sort of, the happiness is self-perpetuating in a way. That it doesn't require, it's not like I cared for one person today and if I don't care for 10 tomorrow, I'm not going to get the same rush from it. It can be more steady. But to bring it back to the point of utopia then, are we living in a utopia then? Maybe we already are, because everyone has the chance to pursue that happiness by their own definition. Are we in a utopia right now? Is this it? Is this perfect? Is this world as it exists with all of its frailties and all of its potentiality presenting to you this opportunity to be happiness, and you're living the dream, right?
Well, of course not. But that's because people are not, because not everyone has those opportunities.
Right, we are sitting here
We can be happy.
in
we
HKIS talking about this, but I think there's some people who can't pursue the happiness that we can.
Oh. Maybe I can't pursue the happiness they can because I'm sitting in HKIS.
That may also be true.
Oh.
And maybe then it goes back to the old Buddhist argument
Yes.
that it all stems from our desires, and
Oh.
and all we have to do.
To create a utopia is to eliminate desire.
Yes.
Well,
So load up the injections, right?
well, that would also be a fourth level of happiness to,
Mm.
not to have any desires, to be yourself,
Mm.
and to attain happiness from that would be almost like enlightenment.
Does that make all the attempts that past people have tried to do moot then? They have always been trying to work within the system to create it into a utopia, and never have they pulled away
So you're
from
saying
it.
like a true you can't have a utopia any bigger than yourself. There's no such thing as like a utopian society. There's
Perhaps
like
is that
a utopian embrace of selfhood. But like as soon as you try to extend that to one other person, inevitably you're not going to be on the same page anymore.
Well, in Buddhism, they're bodhisattvas.
Yeah.
So those who are at the shore of enlightenment, they could be happy forever and pass on, but they decide to stay, and there's that fellowship to bring others with you.
Mm. Did you watch Firefly and Serenity?
No.
Oh.
What is it?
Well, it's in that he's the main character, Malcolm Reynolds, it's set in the future, and he flies a spaceship, and he lost the war to the Galactic Alliance, and the Galactic Alliance has basically created this utopia where they're drugging people to keep them calm, right? So that they go along with the thing, and his big mission is basically saying that like He fights to get the message out that this drug is being used, and that's the reason that things are out of control, that people are not experiencing life to its fullest anymore. And basically his argument is that we only have utopia when we're able to, like you said at the beginning, maybe appreciate both the heights and the depths of what the human experience or human emotion is capable of. But I don't feel like I'm in a utopia, if you ask me.
right? But is that so bad? Do we necessarily have to experience?
We got the idea of it, though. Like,
negatives.
where did the idea of it come from,
Thing
Like,
is,
It feels like as if we're reaching a point where we're saying we don't want a utopia because,
No, I want it.
well, I mean, JV was sort of saying
well, not
we
necessarily.
don't want everyone to be happy because then
Not necessarily. I'm saying, I lost my train of thought.
I want people to opt in. I want to be able to say, here's the vision. Are you on board with this vision? Let's do this thing then. And then that community can form a utopian community.
But what happens if someone decides
Where isn't touched by globalization?
Then you kick them out.
and
No,
eventually,
okay.
eventually,
Okay, you don't have to.
Yeah,
You don't have to
no.
kick them out. They'll opt out.
The thing is,
They're allowed to opt out. That's the problem with like Pol Pot's thing or Mao's thing or any of the utopias, the Puritans thing. Any of the utopias that tried to be created is that people couldn't voluntarily opt out. Like they were there, and then their kids were born there, and they couldn't opt out, and they're stuck in. Yeah, you should be able. You don't have to purge. Just like, oh, you don't want to play anymore? Okay, go.
Well, I have a couple of things to say. First, in response to what you said,
Uh,
I mean, even if you did have a wilderness utopia or some place that was not touched by globalization, and you had your society
Bhutan.
come together, you'd eventually have kids,
Yeah.
right? And then what are the kids gonna do? They're not. They still have to learn your way of life,
Yeah.
and they may not agree with it because there's an inherent humanity that will disagree with or question the society we live in. The second thing I have to say is said, I'm not saying we shouldn't strive towards a utopia, and and we're definitely not living in one now. But I'm saying that a utopia would not be a place where everyone is always happy. And in the world we live in today, it may not be utopia, but it could definitely be better. It could be a better place. I mean, people should strive for something better, like more sustainable, more friendly, less war, etc.
So we should talk about utopias so that we kind of know what we're aiming for.
Yes.
with
Well,
the
sure,
admission that
I
we're never
guess.
going to get there.
Well, that there is no utopia. I mean,
So
when-
what would we be
well,
striving for?
well, people live life striving for happiness. A lot of people live life striving for happiness.
Hmm.
It's something that they don't always attain, but they always want to get it. You know, we may, as a society, strive for utopia, but never attain it. But in a way, we're still,
It's the striving
Living.
that makes us.
maybe so.
And yet you said that a utopia is not where everyone is happy. So are we striving for a utopia? By what definition are you describing your utopia as then, if we're to strive for it?
Well, the shape of the. I mean, I think the shape of the world we're in now is not that great. I mean, I mean that's the truth of it. I'm a cynic, and I never thought I'd be a cynic. Sitting next to Mr. Kersten, but the cynic. Anyways, but yeah, this world can change for the better, but I don't believe the better is a place where we should always strive to live better, but because of what makes us human, we'll never attain it. But it's the striving that's important, and it's what we do in our lives that's gonna affect people of the future.
So we'll hold this conception of utopia as a sort of Platonic ideal form and mold our society towards it.
That's
Sure.
it.
Sure.
Did you have closing statements? Did you have
I
closing
could
statements?
agree with that.
That's it. The ideal Platonic form. That's right.
Well,
We
let
have-
us end on that note then, that we will hold an idealized utopian form and strive towards it, but make sure we don't reach it.
Make sure you don't violate the principles of it in the effort to reach it.
Or deny what makes us human.
All right. Well, thank you to Mr. Kersten and JV for that discussion on utopias, and also we touched on dystopias. This has been the Open Forum. I've been your host, Martin Mann. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. If you have found the show engaging, have your own say in the discussion by tweeting @RadioHKIS #TheOpenForum. You are also welcome to suggest future topics and future guests. Don't forget to also visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/RadioHKIS and Twitter at twitter.com/RadioHKIS for the latest news. You can also access the link to this stream and past shows at radiohkis.tumblr.com. We hope you've enjoyed the program.